Now, we've all seen bad fandoms, terrible ones even, fandoms so bad they make you cringe at the thought of them. Well, my friends, after delving deep into the fandom of Tokyo Ghoul, I must say that you really haven't seen a bad fandom, that is, until today. Hello everyone, this is the RPG Monger, and welcome to the Fandom Files, a weekly series where we all collectively dive deep into the recesses of notorious fandoms. So let me tell you, that out of all the things I've seen making this series so far, never have I seen more repulsive and just plainly ignorant people in just about any fandom ever. Though before I tell you all the horrors I've uncovered, I must stress as always that I am in no way criticizing the actual anime and manga itself. This video is solely dedicated to these quote-unquote fans occupying the fandom of the series. Tokyo Ghoul, a complex series surrounding the eternal tug-of-war between everyday humans, human-eating ghouls, and those in between. Just by this base concept alone, it is no surprise that the series got to the level of popularity that it did, with the manga actually selling over 3 million copies in 2015. And not to mention, after only being around a year or two, Tokyo Ghoul's sequel, Tokyo Ghoul Re, already sold over 3 million copies as well. Truly an amazing feat if I've ever seen one, and while I may have my personal opinions surrounding the anime, it is by far one of the most popular out there, with tons of people seeing it one way or another. Of course, however, with such massive amounts of popularity on an international level, a fandom of equal enormity was bound to arise, and arise it did. While not immediately, once the first anime of Tokyo Ghoul was released, it absolutely exploded, gaining a fandom nearly or just as large as some of the other ruling behemoths. And like most fandoms of this stature, the root of all of the evil was none other than everyone's favorite site, Tumblr. Funnily enough, however, while some notable things occurred with the fandom and the first anime, it was actually Tokyo Ghoul Re that started the real flames of war within this battle-scarred fandom. And keep this all in mind, Tokyo Ghoul had an especially large amount of just about all the ingredients for the perfect storm, like loads of edgy children and vocal fujoshis. And while the signs of a disaster were evident for quite some time, the things I'm about to tell you are honestly shocking. So to start out with something that compared to the other two happenings is kind of light but still really dumb, let's talk about a certain controversial character from Tokyo Ghoul Re, Toru Mutsuki. Now, not to get into the whole deal with this character, as I'm sure there are channels out there who have analyzed them to an extent that I never could, basically Toru is trans. And let's just say that there are quite a few character developments that take place which didn't exactly sit well with the fandom. Like, it got to the point where people would go on witch hunts and just spam any and all posts to any sort of forum surrounding or on the topic of Toru. And fan artists weren't spared from this either. It even got to the point of people just straight up dropping the manga due to them not being able to deal with the way the author was portraying the character. But what about people just wanting to have a serious and friendly discussion about the matter? Well, unfortunately, we couldn't have those either, as inevitably they all ended up becoming complete and absolute shit shows, with people insulting each other left and right, with the original topic of conversation becoming completely forgotten. I swear, there's this one thread on Tumblr that really just embodies this too well, as what starts out with just one person wanting to discuss the intricacies surrounding Toru's extremely complicated psyche ends up with some random person jumping in and completely taking everything out of proportion, all the while also insulting the original poster. But let me say right now that this doesn't even hold a candle to the next thing I have in store for you all. Fujoshis. Remember how I said that this fandom had a high concentration of them? Well, it was at this point that this aspect of the fandom ended up proving to be its downfall. Though don't forget that if you're just someone who enjoys to ship characters and you're an alright person that respects others, then have at it. I can assure you that you're nothing like these people. So what even happened that I've been hyping so much up to this point? Well, it all started with little old chapter 125 of Tokyo Ghoul Re. And do take note that I'm about to enter mild spoiler territory, so just keep that in mind. Basically, this chapter contains Kaneki and Toka engaging in some let's just say, coffee brewing. And the fandom just would not have it, because you see, as there was a large amount of Fujoshis present, they all wanted Kaneki to engage in some coffee brewing with Hide, his best friend from the start of the series. So upon hearing that their dreams in the form of ships were completely and utterly shattered, if they weren't gonna get what they wanted, then nobody would. These people then took to the internet, immediately calling the author himself homophobic for destroying their ship. Like, I've seen ship wars before, but this is on a whole new level of absolute stupidity. People actually burned their volumes of the manga sharing the pictures to him, all over a ship not coming to fruition. Some fans, actually, you know what, I wouldn't even consider these people fans, actually went and told the author to commit suicide over this so-called crime against humanity. They even bragged about pirating the series instead of buying it legally. Like, some authors have had to plead with fans to stop attacking each other over things like this, for example the author of Fairy Tail, but this is on a whole new level. How is it that someone who considered a series like this as their favorite of all time could instantly flip and burn the actual manga? It just makes no sense whatsoever. And as if this whole situation just could not get more ridiculous, if any of these people did the slightest basic research, literally in the first chapter of the manga, Kaneki is completely infatuated with Rize, you know, the person whose name isn't Hide. The fact that they'd be so blinded by their Fujoshi tunnel vision as to not notice these kinds of things astounds me. The thing is that this was really recent too, as all of these events just happened a few months ago, though thankfully not all hope was lost, as like all fandoms, logical, respectable people existed within the fandom, and meanwhile all of this was happening, they took to Twitter for a different reason. Instead of telling the author that he was homophobic and that he should just go ahead and off himself, they instead created the hashtag Ishida Appreciation and sent him tons of positive messages in the midst of absolute chaos. It's just the fact that people have to realize. Authors just cannot bend and twist to every single whim of their fans. Believe it or not, they actually have their own conviction when creating these wonderful stories. So after hearing that mess, you must be wondering, Monger, my guy, nothing could be worse than actually biting the hand that feeds you. And while I would agree with you, this next deal is just too astonishing on every level. Juzo Suzuya, a character who is quite prominent throughout the entire Tokyo Ghoul series for being one of the most quirky and outright odd characters. Well, the thing is, with Suzuya, his character design is definitely one of the more unique out there, with him actually having cross stitches on his body that he sewed onto himself. Just the thought of that makes you a bit queasy, right? Well, apparently it doesn't have that effect on everyone, as in China, the character actually spawned a trend of skin embroiderment. And I will warn you right now, some of the images I'm about to use may be disturbing to some, so if you're easily riled up by these kinds of things, I'd suggest you look away. Basically, on social media, Chinese teens would sew thread into just about every body part, from the arms, hands, legs, and even lips. And as most people who've had basic health education know, breaking the skin, even if not pricking a vein, is never good news. After all, you must remember, the whole point of even having our skin in the first place is to keep out bacteria that could cause infection. By breaking your skin, all you're doing is just letting these bacteria into your body. In response, the Chinese government actually ended up making Tokyo Ghoul Route A one of the many anime to be completely banned from the country. Like, no joke. Whether it be for a cosplay or just for fun, harming yourself like this is never okay. Though as always, even though I touched upon it a bit already, like all fandoms, Tokyo Ghoul has quite the sane and fantastic side as well. Along with the people who actually supported the man who gave them the entire series to begin with, Tokyo Ghoul has got to have one of the most vibrant communities in terms of wonderful fan art and great discussions out there. While it may not be at the massive height that it once was a few years ago with the anime, I can for sure say that it wields quite the plenty of wonderful people. So here are my final thoughts on it all. People, come on. With each and every one of these issues, none of them would even become issues if you just use common sense. And like I said, just remember that at the end of the day, whatever media it is that you're consuming, it will always be subject to the person who created it, no matter what. Though now, it's that time of the week again. Time to read my favorite story from the last episode. And do give me your worst experience with the Tokyo Ghoul fandom, I'd love to know. So here's my favorite from last week. My favorite experience from the JoJo fandom is when I started my Instagram a couple of years ago, and I made a bunch of pretty bad fan art and started getting likes and followers for just liking and drawing JoJo. It was around when part 3 came out, and I met some very cool people on there because we all like JoJo, and no one from our schools never even knew what JoJo was. What I think can save the fan base is that everyone should just welcome each other and not be so toxic. Like, I can't count how many times I've heard the same, "Is that a JoJo reference?" or "read the manga," or "your favorite JoJo is trash." Like, it's not as bad as other fandoms, but there are some people in the fandom that can ruin JoJo for other people. I could not agree more. Just like you said, it really isn't the worst fandom out there compared to others. It's just that those people can be terribly annoying for just about everyone. Oh, and do remember to vote in the iCard for the next episode of the Fandom Files. I'd love to see what you guys want next, and do give me suggestions in the comments. Oh, and do remember I have a second channel as well. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, do subscribe, and today's cool thing of the day is, of course, none other than the main man behind it all, Sui Ishida. I have to say that to deal with the kinds of nonsense directed at your actual creation and self on this magnitude is no small feat. I can only imagine what it would be like to have that many supposed fans just flip like that. So even though it may be a few months late, not only do I praise you for dealing with such garbage, but I also praise you for making honestly one of my favorite manga out there to this day. So that being said, I'm the RPG Monger, and don't forget that each and every one of you are fantastic.